So, Jonathan, what do you think about the vertical video craze that's been happening now within now Instagram TV has it, the Instagram stories has copied Snapchat's vertical video, and sort of everybody, and even ads now are verticalized.
Yeah, I mean, there is this craze of verticalizing everything. I don't know if it's a fad. It's definitely tied into the technology that we have, the possibilities, and the constraints sometimes that we think we still have. And I think you had some things to say about that.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's sort of interesting. I mean, the reason I want to bring it up is just because now we have Instagram TV, who's sort of, it's gone all in on vertical video. They want it to be a native vertical video sort of platform. They've encouraged folks to record custom content in that format and not sort of crop YouTube or crop other video from other places. And I think that's interesting. We've sort of completely changed yet again the format in which we're viewing content and and acquiring content, because the folks who make the content now, they have to think about it differently. And that transition has happened since sort of the early days of film, where we had 4:3 aspect ratios on CRT, sort of tube TVs. Then it sort of went to a more landscape orientation of a 16:9. And then even movies, I think movie format is 21:9. And then when phones became such a big thing, like smartphones, not just regular phones, then people started thinking about other kinds of content. So Instagram started square, right? When they first announced, it was only square content. And sort of what does that look like? And now YouTube supports square video natively and rectangle video without letterboxing. And letterboxing meaning those sort of black bars that either appear on the side or front. And now companies have been built on that. Like Snapchat was built sort of in the vertical video world for the vertical video consumption. And it's just sort of fascinating how that's occurring, and how sort of our tools, mainly mobile phones, have phased and changed consumption. And I think in part because people are trying to capitalize on the maximizing my screen real estate.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think that it's interesting. Well, it poses a design challenge, right? And depending where you're at, but if you want to capture multiple platforms and what kind of dimensions you should use, but it's also maybe interesting to kind of question what is really dictating these different formats. It's I doubt that it's arbitrary, and kind of wonder, what is it? A trend, the people? Is it the technology? Is it a physical constraint? Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I would guess it's an optimization. Sort of the reason we've gone vertical is an optimization towards the technology that we're used to, and the technology is sort of in the way, shape, and form it is because of ergonomics. So phones aren't the size of TVs because they wouldn't fit in our pocket and we couldn't hold it in our hands, right?
Right.
So that kind of thing. And then people want to then sort of piggyback on that and say, well, why do I only want to use half your screen when I can use all of it and give you more content, more for you to consume? Maybe that's more immersive. Maybe that means I can put more words on the screen. Maybe that means I can sell you more things. Or maybe that just means you won't get distracted because there's something else also on the screen. So I'm guessing that's sort of the rationale that's come out of it.
Okay. I mean, it just seems that, as we kind of, well, we just need to fill all of the surfaces with kind of screen real estate, and then things will start to get really wonky. I think at some point you talked about this like circular screen, or what was it here? I have something in my notes.
Oh, the circular video that Snapchat does?
Oh yeah. Oh, it's just
Yeah. So
circular video.
yeah, so that's kind of interesting, actually. I think honestly that was the most interesting recent time video curation that's been done. So let me talk about what that means first. So when Snapchat released the spectacle glasses, which were the Snapchat glasses that everyone sort of called them, you could record video, and what it would do was it would record a sort of fisheye circle video, and then when you upload it to Snapchat, the end user would be able to rotate their phone and sort of crop in. So I, as the user viewing your Snapchat, would see whichever section of the video I decided based on the orientation on my phone. If I left it vertical, I saw sort of from the bottom to the top. If I rotated it, I saw the left and the right. So imagine a circle and then crop a rectangle on top of it and then rotate that rectangle. And that's sort of what was happening. And it was interesting because you were giving the power of curation to the end user rather than having it dictated by like the movie director or whatever.
Oh, it's interesting, actually. Yeah.
Right. And I think that worked a lot well in Snapchat's case, but hasn't in other cases. But go ahead.
No, I was just going to like really think about how you change the curation, you put the decision, you kind of give the user the power to be able to crop and use their own dimensions or their own kind of view. It's with something that resonates with them. So it's kind of like almost like a live participatory design function.
Right. But I think why it worked, so I'm going to give another example, like VR video or 360 video as it's better known, right? There's quite a few videos online where there's this participatory video and things are happening all around you and you have to sort of follow the narrative around you. But I think from my experience and from folks that I've talked to, it doesn't work so well because you don't know what you're supposed to be looking at. You're spending too much time trying to figure out what you're supposed to engage with rather than enjoy the content.
Right.
Because there's so much sort of area to curate from, where in this case of Snapchat circular video, it's a much smaller area. There's only 1 degree of freedom.
Yeah.
So if I miss a little bit of something, it's not a big deal. But I could, in 360 video, I could be totally out of frame for like half of the event and not even know it, right? So it's like curation, but to a point.
With its, you have to have some sort of balance of providing the user with some constraints so that they're not missing the action.
Right, exactly.
Well, that's interesting. I mean, I to have to be honest, I'm not very familiar with these different platforms. I should actually take a look at them.
Yeah, check them out. But I mean, I think that's sort of interesting because it's something where these types of content, right? We're changing what it means to be content, where one's a passive experience, one becomes interactive, and what does that even mean between passive and interactive? And maybe you have some thoughts on that, or how do we then design systems that are agnostic of aspect ratio, or design content better for these things? Maybe you have thoughts on that.
Yeah, I mean, kind of thinking here on the fly. I like like I was saying, I like the way that if you design something that provides the user with those options, but then it's very difficult to design that way because you have to restrict it as well in a way that it's not too many of them, it's not too few, and then how are you going to direct their kind of publishing kind of process, right? So I don't know. I mean, I need to I need to think more about this.
No, that's understandable. But I mean, something you mentioned is sort of the context and the environment in which these pieces live as well. And I think, like, what's going to happen when we need to migrate vertical video to a TV? Like, how does that work? Right now, people do it, and they just sort of letterbox it, but that's sort of a lame experience. Or that you're going to design custom content for each platform, Or are we going to abstract it out where maybe now you're not curating it, but your device is curating the content because of the sort of hardware limitations?
Yeah, I mean, like I could imagine if there's some sort of next generation software that you have to kind of take a step back and saying, why are we recording this? What is the interesting? What is the subject of it? And you're kind of
Right.
getting more into, having the application or technology actually also kind of help you along the way to kind of decide the dimensions, especially if you're sharing it among different mediums or different platforms or devices, so that,
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
you know, I think I would predict that video in actually filming it and editing it and all that is going to get a lot more interactive, meaning that maybe an implementation of like object recognition, some kind of, content aware technology, both inside and outside of the video, and those kind of features helping to curate the video itself, and
Mm-hmm.
formatting it in the right aspect ratio, not only on where the device is being played, but also, like even outside of the device, like where it's being played. I don't know what that looks like. I know that's very vague and very kind of ambiguous,
Mm.
but
Well, I'm curious. I'm curious what you mean by where it's being played outside of the device. You mean like
yeah,
geographically?
yeah, exactly.
Oh, okay,
Um,
okay, yeah.
and I think that within design, these are the types of questions that should be asked, and also where research uh, is definitely needed, right? And they probably do
Right,
this, but like more of an ethnographic research, right? Seeing culturally how
mm-hmm.
people actually record particular content. There's a difference between a mom
Right,
recording a baseball or soccer, soccer game of their kids, to, a teenager being out in at school or something and recording, at school, after school, they go to wherever, right? And this different kind of
mm-hmm.
content. So even having that awareness of it and providing different options. So you're talking about persona, but
Right.
the research being able to see how are these types of groups, or these people, like, not people, but like teenagers from this group or this region.
These different
Yeah,
demographics,
exactly.
right?
Uh, recording and sharing their videos, and what devices do they use?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. No, and that goes into sort of what kind of cameras are they using? Are they using selfie sticks? A lot like that kind of thing. But I think you mentioned one thing that's particularly interesting. You said location being interesting, right? And that sort of gets me to think about, so this content is context
Mm-hmm.
aware, and that's sort of interesting because the same video could be played in three different locations, but it has sort of a different flavor based on that location, which actually gets me thinking of something that several different folks in Hollywood do, and particularly in Disney and Pixar case, they change some of the subtle elements of the movie to match the cultural aspects of the region they display in.
Mm-hmm.
So there was the Marvel movie, and it was Captain America, I think, and he has his little book when he sort of comes back from the ice in, it's like 2015 or
Yeah.
whatever, and he's trying to learn, like, oh, this is a smartphone, this is a, and in the US you have sort of one movie listed labeled as like, I don't remember what it was, but some like Godzilla was labeled as something I need to watch, and these other movies, and they changed the names of the movies based on the region because that sort of resonated more with the population.
Right.
So someone had done the research that this is a better idea.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. That's a very good example. That's being the context aware regionally. I mean, you have all of this information you can play with, and I know that it requires it's quite a bit of research to kind of know what resonates with the geographic location or with the culture that this is being, that products are being used. But at some point, it's well worth it, because you
Hmm.
definitely are creating meaningful experiences and not just pushing out your product and blindly and hoping that it sticks.
Right. No, for sure. I mean, sort of that personalization, even if it's at a regional scale, is still one good step towards sort of true personalization. And if you can get to products that work perfectly for me and for everybody else, well then you've really nailed it. But I think we're a bit of a ways away from that in terms of sort of scale production. But that's a little bit tangent to this conversation.
Yeah, no, that's true. But I'm just kind of thinking about, maybe we don't have to recreate the wheel every time. Maybe we don't have to do this research every time. The power of, for
Hmm.
example, of YouTube and Wikipedia is that people that get on those platforms are able to have a lot of authorship over the content and are able to provide that translation themselves, that regional translation. And so there's
Mm,
again, we come to the kind of the term participatory design, where it's not designed before and during research. In that, in a sense, it's designed live, where you provide,
hmm.
not everybody. I mean, this is really difficult and it's kind of very vague, but you provide some sort of authorship and the tools to be able to kind of capture or at least use that kind of regional way of doing things or knowledge,
Right.
whatever that is.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, I mean that could be simple as like a video has object recognition and I'm searching for like soccer balls. So it'll show me the scenes only with the soccer balls and not the whole
Yeah,
match. That could be one sort of simple use case. I don't know how practical that is, but that could be one way to express what you just mentioned.
yeah. It's like really curating the content. I mean, I'm just kind of thinking here as well as when your phone, if you have an iPhone, this happens to me where it'll on in the pictures it will actually create kind of like a slideshow of the day, right?
Mm,
But if you
hmm.
actually integrate there like some maybe object recognition technology, and I know this would be kind of pricey and expensive and a little heavy, but some form of way of knowing what's inside of those pictures and categorizing them in a particular way, that it would give you this template like, oh, here's all of your soccer games, that you've recorded for your children, and at the end of it, it gives you different formats or ways to kind of show them. Are you going to show them on a TV or on a mobile phone? And it kind of learns, right? Which is not very difficult
Hmm.
nowadays. What you're
Hmm.
actually doing most often. You always download
Right.
it to your laptop, or you always want to show it on the television.
Hmm.
And so just kind of integrating these different sets of features, but providing more possibilities instead of
Right.
just dictating, oh no, we're going to have this aspect ratio, it's going to be this way, and we're going to
Hmm.
see if it works.
Hmm. No, I mean that's definitely interesting. I think my sort of hesitation and going all in on sort of curation or maybe even personalization. So this is sort of going back on something I said is then you have only this convergent thinking, but you need that divergent thinking to sort of explore new things and learn about things outside your comfort zone.
Yeah,
And I think that is sort of maybe even an issue in our existing sort of technology realms. Like, I mean, I'm thinking Amazon Video, Netflix, YouTube. What you like, it gives you more of, but that's it. It doesn't give you things outside of that scope to see if, hey, maybe there's something else out there that you're not aware of. And how can we sort of push that? And I think honestly, we could go on that topic for quite a while, but we can chat a little bit about it, and then we'll take that one to another episode at some future point.
Yeah, no, the thoughts I had on that was, as a designer, kind of questioning what are your restrictions, and are they really restrictions? Because maybe you start designing for a particular way because it's always been done like that, and because you have the tools ready for you to just start the work. But what would be more interesting to capture that kind of what hasn't been done before, and the divergent thinking is really taking it back once in a while and saying, well, are these restrictions still a part of our platform, and why? Maybe they're not. Maybe they've just been doing it that way, and kind of going through different iterations of different ways of doing and thinking. So, it's kind of bringing me back to, I was listening to a lecture by Gayatri Spivak, probably butchered her name, and she was talking about kind of like this epistemic change, which means basically the way we think about things. So not thinking about new ways of doing things, but or not thinking about new things, right? But new ways of thinking about things. And there's this, I guess it's a little not being very coherent, but there's a slight difference there of how you go about thinking, different ways of thinking about things. And instead of just coming up with different kind of aspect ratios and different ways to push your content out or to, create video, but just even rethinking the how people consume it, or how even, video integrates into your product, just rethinking maybe there's other ways of seeing those and doing those things outside of just their smaller constraints.
Right. Like maybe video isn't the best way to share this out.
Or just, or I guess I don't know what I'm saying here. Maybe you want to cut this particular thing out. Yeah.
No, I think this is interesting. I mean, it sort of says like, look, I think initially a lot of what YouTube was let me go to YouTube, do XYZ, right? I need to figure out how to rewire my light switch, and then you would watch the video, pause, take a step, etc. But maybe could we convert that content to an AR experience where you hold your phone up to the light switch and it tells you, unscrew this, plug this wire here, right? Yeah. So that's the constraint that those designers would think to. Not, it needs to be a square video, but it still has to be video. Mm-hmm. Okay, maybe if your business is in video, maybe you don't want to switch that. But if it's about how do we help people fix things, maybe that conversion is a valuable conversion, and that's the scope that you scale to.
Yeah, definitely.
Awesome. Well, I think we've sort of exhausted this topic at least for the time being, and we'll continue to talk about it. I think data curation will be something we'll talk more to in the next one.
Thanks for tuning into this episode of Design Gold. To learn more about the show, follow us online at DesignGold.xyz.